I'm Luke, and we're here with my co-host Noah. Noah, go ahead and say hi.
What's going on, guys?
And my other co-host Angel.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And today we have special guest Katie Silverwings with us. How you doing today, Katie?
Hello from Memphis, Tennessee. I'm doing okay.
Good. It's great having you on the show. We're so happy we got to meet up with you.
I'm happy to be here.
So, Katie, why don't you tell us a little bit about we've been on your website and kind of like poking around, and I'm very curious to learn more about your space quail stories.
Yes. So Space Whale is my little webcomic that is a spin-off of my book series, but generally is just a little slice of life fun thing about little quail who are space rangers and hang out on a starship with people who are actually space rangers.
Oh, okay. So what is you said it's a spin-off off your main writing?
Yeah, so I write a book series. Are y'all getting a feedback of my voice from something?
I am hearing a bit of an echo. I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Yeah.
Let me get my headphones on. I think that might be me. Sorry.
You are perfectly fine.
Is that better?
Yeah, it sounds way better.
Okay. So what was I saying?
We were talking about your main series.
Okay. So I write a book series, well, a story series in general, that's called Strange Space Adventures. And it is sort of slice of life sci-fi with a cozy feel and a side of hope punk adventure. It's all stories about friendship and cool aliens and exploring the galaxy, and also sometimes cute little fuzzy aliens causing chaos wherever they go.
Sounds like fun.
Interesting. And how many books do you have in that series? Is it just one, or do you have multiple?
So currently there are 3 novels, 3 novellas, and a short story collection in that series. I'm actively working on writing the next book.
Wow, and how long have you been working on this series?
Since 2020. So I published the first one in May of 2022. So yeah.
Awesome.
It seems like there's a lot of people that really started getting their writing career on in 2020, because I know Eric and Armani, they started the old universe and Forbidden Origins in 2020 as well.
Yep.
This was my lockdown project. So back in the March that lasted for 2 years, I was living in the UK going to glassblowing school, and I was stuck alone in my flat in a little town called Farnham in the UK for 3 months without seeing another person. And that's when I started writing these stories after I ran out of homework to finish for my final project for my degree. And then when I got back to the States halfway between lockdowns and landed in Memphis, I kept writing them. And then I finally got to the point where I was tired of being rejected for grad school applications, or for, oh, hey, we've had you fly out for this job application, but we've already given the job to somebody else, or have all sorts of other things. And just jumped in with both feet and published my first novella, Feathered Friendship, and I haven't really looked back since. Really, I'm just trying to get the characters to pay rent on all the space they take up in my brain.
I mean, that's totally fair.
Yeah, they take up a lot of it too.
So why science fiction?
It's characters wanted for this particular series. I have a unfinished fantasy project about talking cats and interdimensional travel that I haven't finished because I started working on this. This took away.
Okay.
And I'm looking at your Space Quail webcomic, and I was wondering, do you do the art yourself?
I do. So I draw all of the line art for Space Whale and for my other projects. So all of my book covers are my own art as well. Everything is
Oh,
pinned on paper. And then after I've drawn it on paper, I scan it in and I color everything in Photoshop with watercolor brushes.
Oh, that's awesome. I love the way they look.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is really cool. And I see that you have a coloring book as well.
Yes. The coloring book was something that the other half of the indie publisher I work with requested because I have all of the line art for these drawings sitting around because I essentially draw my art pieces as coloring book pages for myself. So we put that together because since my fiction that I write is classified as adult fiction, but it's actually open to being read to and by all ages. So having the coloring book for the kids who come by my booth, I give out coloring pages when I'm in person at events to bored kids and bored other artists as well. So a lot of adults enjoy that too. It's just a fun thing to have available.
Yeah, that's really cool.
cool.
I know. I mean, my wife would probably love this coloring book. She's got a bunch of coloring books in the house.
Yeah, and I have a copy of the coloring book that I take around with me when I'm at cons, or at least I did at the last con I was at when we debuted the coloring book. So all of my fellow artisan friends who are in the Memphis area, I have a tote bag with crayons and bright, shiny markers and colored pencils and a copy of the coloring book. And I'm slowly getting all of my artist friends to color a page for me. And I need
that's
to
awesome.
put those up on my website because they've given me permission to post them. So that's been fun to do.
What's it been like working the convention circuit?
It's been interesting. I started in that right when I started with this. So I published Feathered Friendship in May of 2022, and the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention here in town in November of 2022 was the first convention that I ever had a table at, and the first pop culture convention I'd ever attended.
Okay.
But it's been a lot of fun. I've mostly been in this region so far, but I meet so many wonderful, interesting people through that. I really have been enjoying it. It's a lot of work, and I'm very grateful that my father is happy to be my road crew and come with me to things, because I have to set up both my book setup and my stained glass setup. And setting up stained glass in a convention hall is always an experience.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So do you run two separate booths, or is it just one with both your books and the stained glass?
It's just one, actually. So I have, and I'll send y'all some pictures later if you want to see them. So
Yeah, that'd be great.
and I can even put them in the chat right now so you can see it. I set up a table with all of my books on it, and then I have these stands that I hang the stained glass on that sort of sit behind my table so the glass is more secure. And those have nice little feet on them so they don't tip over.
That's cool.
That's awesome. How'd you get into doing stained glass?
Well, long and convoluted story. You said I was allowed to go off on tangents.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
So my first degree is from a little university in Abilene, Texas. It's called McMurray, one of the 3 universities of Abilene. So I went to school there, and I was doing a triple major in English, creative writing / literature, history, studio art. The art department had some rescheduling happen with when the classes were being offered, so I graduated as a double major, and I didn't complete all of the last year's worth of stuff for the art degree. Because when you've already been in a university for 5 years and they tell you you're going to have to stay another year and a half, you don't want to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
So
imagine.
I finished up that, And when I was there, I was doing a lot of textile artwork. I was doing a lot of patchwork because the history project that I was doing as my main focus for that aspect of my work was on the history of quilt making in northwestern Texas. So I did that, and then I wound up moving to Memphis, Tennessee, because that's where my family was by that point. And while I was here, I got a commission for a art quilt piece that was in the form of a stained glass window with all of these different signatures from over 200 different faith community nurses from across the world incorporated into it, that I embroidered every single one of them by hand, except for a few that one of the nurses at their conference helped me embroider. So while I was doing all the crazy quilt work on that to finish it up, I was looking up different embroidery stitches, and I found out that the Royal School of Needlework at Hampton Court Palace in the UK offers, in conjunction with this university called the University for the Creative Arts, a degree in hand embroidery.
Oh, wow.
Which for me at the time sounded like a perfect fit. So, being the sort to jump in with both feet and just see where I land, I applied to that program. But they'd already filled all of their spots in the embroidery program and didn't quite have room for me. But when they called to say that, they also said, but wait, we showed your portfolio to the head of our glass, ceramics, jewelry, and metalwork program, and he wants you on his course. Long story short, how do you turn an opportunity like that down? So I wound up in England for 3 years in this little town 34 miles west of London, and I was studying glass, ceramics, jewelry, and metalwork. Or for me personally, it was more focus on metalwork and glass, because ceramics is the one art form that has never liked me. I can't breathe if I do ceramics. But so I was doing all of the metalwork and all of the jewelry. And while I was there, I did a summer internship at a studio that did traditional lead line stained glass and fused glass. So I got a little bit of training there. And then again, I already told you how lockdown happened. I graduated at the worst possible point in time to graduate with an art degree, because we didn't even get to have our senior show or anything because lockdown.
Yeah.
And I wound up back in Memphis. And because of some family things, we were in lockdown longer than anyone else in the state of Tennessee was, because we had some family medical things going on. And when I finally got out of that and was able to start leaving the house, a random gentleman that my father encountered at the hardware store where he works had struck up a conversation with my father, as old farmers do, and said, oh, hey, I have a leather workshop, and is your daughter interested in coming and working with us as an apprentice? So I spent a year apprenticing in a leather workshop.
Oh, wow.
And so I do leather work as well. It's not up on my website, but I do hand-tooled and carved leather work in that traditional cowboy style. I was trained by an absolute master of that. And the retired nurse who lived in the house next to that studio used to do stained glass, and she was looking for somebody to take all of her old glass and a lot of fabric and things, and she let me buy all the stained glass stuff off of her so I could get back into doing glass. Because as much as I want to be blowing glass, I have to have a fireproof place to work for that, and a residential backyard is not necessarily the best place to set up a furnace.
Yeah.
And because I'm in Memphis, land of the dollar-sized mosquito, my father's actually built me a mosquito cage to work in when I'm doing the stained glass work. So I have a little area that's screened off on our carport. That's where I do all of my glass cutting and all of my soldering, because stained glass requires a little bit of melting metal and having flux smells and all this different stuff that you don't want to do inside because you need ventilation for it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, long story short, that's how I wound up doing stained glass along with my books. But it's all kind of works well together. Um, I'm working on some new stained glass designs for this year, and it works into some of my books a little bit, the way that my book cover art turns out. I keep having people tell me it looks like stained glass windows, and I don't intentionally do that. It's just apparently the way I design.
No, yeah, I was looking at it, and especially, I was looking at the Celadon one. I think that's how you
Yes.
pronounce it.
Yeah.
That one looks like it could be a window, which I
Yeah.
think is really cool.
Yeah, that one, I had so much fun drawing that. That was my second novel that came out, and I wasn't quite secure in my drawing faces skills yet, so I put the pose in where Celadon Torval, the main character of that book, is sitting and looking out over their home planet, and had it posed from behind. But it does have that old cathedral art look to it, and I really
Yeah.
love that. And that book has, as it turns out, is my officially award-winning book. The Memphis Public Libraries gave it the Richard Wright Literary Award for Best Adult Fantasy or Science Fiction last year. So it's their
Oh, yeah.
first winner in that category. And it's a story about a friendly little alien making friends with a human and showing him their planet and all their favorite places while they're dealing with some family grief and loss and tensions and, you know, a looming interstellar war that's about to consume their life. But it's a fun, cozy story about friendship, and that's the book that they picked. So it just makes me so happy.
Yeah, that's
Well,
awesome.
congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing. I can definitely vouch on residential yards not being the place for working with hot things. I used to do blacksmithing as a hobby in the notoriously dry Texas landscape, and I started many a fire doing that.
Yeah, okay. Coke forge or gas forge?
Coke.
Ah, nice. That's what I was trained on when I was in England, actually.
Yeah, I took a single 6-hour lesson from a blacksmith like 4 hours away from me, and decided that I wanted to try to teach myself how to do it, and it was definitely an experience.
It is, especially when you do that thing where you leave the metal in the middle of the fire a little bit too long, and suddenly you have a sparkler when you lift it up.
Ah, yes, and then you go ahead and try to quench it in oil.
Oh, God.
See, we used a water quench rather than oil quench in the studio I was in, but
Yeah, I mean, the water was there, I just panicked.
Oh, God.
And then the panic got even more when there's, my small little fire on a stick turned into a 10-foot square radius of flames on dry grass.
Jesus
Okay.
Christ.
Which part of Texas?
Northeastern Texas, Mount Pleasant, Titus County.
Yeah, I'm from Floyd County.
Oh, okay.
Originally. So that empty space between Lubbock and Amarillo, I definitely get the dry grass thing.
Yeah, I lived in the empty space between Texarkana and Dallas.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like you guys are speaking another language. I'm from California, born and raised. And
Same
I've
here. Los
never been to
Angeles.
Texas. Yeah.
Theoretically, Texas has more water than y'all, but I don't know. I've never been to California. I've wanted to go, but I haven't had an opportunity to go that direction yet.
It's lovely in some places.
Yeah.
And we've actually been getting a lot of water recently. It's been very rainy here.
Yes.
I know. I've seen TikToks of very happy people looking at the rain outside and wondering what was happening.
Yeah, I'm like, what is this? What is this liquid coming down from the sky?
Yeah, I swam to work.
See, when I used to drive a truck, I'd been to California, but I'd only driven like into Los Angeles, which was miserable in an 18-wheeler. And then I had to drive north to Washington, and all I passed was like barren landscape and oil derricks, and it stank. It did not smell great.
Oh yeah, it does not smell great there.
So somewhere like Midland, Odessa, got it.
Yeah, very, very similar. And the only other city that I stopped in California was Calexico.
I have no clue where that's at.
It's like right on the Mexican border. And I didn't get to see a whole lot because there was a dust storm, and I literally could not see anything.
Oh,
okay.
God.
How much of a culture shock was it going from here to England?
A little, but it was culture shock in some interesting ways, because thing one, I was by that point 10 years older than most of the people I was living with, because in student housing at universities there, it's usually just the first year students who all are housed on campus, and then everyone else has to find their own accommodations off site. Where when I was in Abilene, I lived on campus up until my next to last year. So all of my housemates were a minimum of 10 years younger than me.
Oh damn.
Oh wow.
And then half of the course that I was on were people who were my parents' ages. Quite a few of them retired medical folks who wanted to be ceramic artists instead now. But I had actually made a friend group right before I went over, because there was a group chat for first years for the university that their student union organized. And I had randomly found a trio of fellas over there who had never played D&D before and were looking for somebody, and the subject came up, and it's like, well, if y'all want to play, I've played before, I get to be DM. So I ran for 3 years. I ran a Dragon Queen campaign for 5th edition. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that unit, but
I'm part of the team that's developing a TTRPG for Forbidden Origins, so I've been a DM in several different campaigns.
So you know the infamous first module of Horde of the Dragon Queen?
Yes.
It took me 3 months to get my players through that.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Every Saturday, but between the fact that I had some different people coming and going with who wanted to be part of my game or who didn't have time to be, and the fact that my players, I love you all dearly, if you're listening to this, are the sort of people that it's like, ooh, that's shiny, I'm going to go over that way. Yeah. And one of them made the mistake of offering his soul to death if he could survive the module.
Oh god.
Well, it turned out just fine for him, because he wound up being the one dueling a certain swordsman at the end of said module. And since he had made the bargain for 24 hours of immortality, I got to kill him off 3 times before he got to 3rd level. Because I have this thing, I don't kill off 1st level characters. They take me too long to help people set up. I'm not killing you until you've hit 2nd level or higher.
I mean, that's totally fair.
Well, especially when you're playing with new players who've never played the game before and are all on a video game design course. So they know the game memes. You don't kill them off until they hit 3rd level, because before that, they're just asking to die.
Yeah, you just don't know what's going to happen. A 1st level player can die in very innocent circumstances.
So that module has a literally level 20 Dragonborn swordsman challenging your players to a duel to the death in the 1st module, when they're all at 1st level. Maybe 2nd, depending on whether you're going with milestones or XP. And I was going with milestones, so they're all 1st level characters.
Yeah, we're I'm finishing up a campaign in a system called Carbon 2185, which is a D20 system, but in a cyberpunk world. And my players, they're great. We have a lot of fun, but they could definitely go like off the beaten path many a times, and I don't run modules. I just run my own campaigns, and I have to do a lot of improvisation. And doing the puzzles has been the hardest part, because they're way more complicated than I think they are when I present them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was running modules, but half of why it took me 3 years was because I kept having to make up things on the fly to deal with stuff my players had done. Like the fact that I wound up, because they kept doing it, house ruling that if anybody rolled double nat 1s on a challenge, I was going to curse them. So I ended up with one of my characters with, again, Kyle, I know you're probably listening to this. You're wonderful. and Rias Lee is an infamous character, I have to tell the story, tried to flirt with Tiamat.
That seems like a
context
great
of who that is.
decision.
He's made-
Tiamat is a very evil dragon.
Oh, okay.
heads, mother of all dragons. The whole point of the campaign is to stop her from coming into the world. And there's this scene in the second module of this. So my players, Kyle has gotten his character, Rias Lee, Puss in Boots, basically. Mr. Puss in Boots here has gotten himself to second level, and he touches this egg that's being ritualistically, that's being ritually turned evil and all this different stuff going on, and ends up kind of in this vision world with some of his friends because he went and touched the thing.
Oh god.
And Tiamat's spirit is talking to him, and of course he's playing as Rias Lee, swashbuckler cat guy. Of course he flirts with her. Of course he tries to roll against me. And it's like, dude, the DC for trying to flirt with Tiamat is really, really high. And you're rolling with disadvantage. He rolls double nat ones. So for the rest of the game, I house rolled a curse for him. And he agreed to this because he's the sort of player that loves this kind of stuff. That basically every time from then on that he rolled a nat 1 during combat, he'd get temporarily possessed by the spirit of said level 20 swordsman that they'd managed to kill somehow before this. And attack the nearest ally.
See, that's part of what makes the games fun, though, is you get cursed and bad things happen. Like, I was always the player that went and touched the thing when everybody else was trying to figure out how they should touch the thing. Just go up and touch it. It's fine.
Yeah, and my players also loved the kobolds so much that I had to come up with a culture for the kobolds on the fly because they don't have much of one. But when your players have just decided that they adore these little critters, it's like, okay, suddenly the kobolds are their own faction, and I have to think up that stuff. Various different things going on with working players' backstories in and having different decisions they made affect what was going on. And I had a great time with it. And the only reason I stopped running the game was because I was on the other side of an ocean from everybody. And you think this time difference that we're dealing with today is a pain? 8-hour time difference.
Oh god.
Oh yeah, that would be miserable to try to schedule around.
Yeah, and then from Abilene joined the game, so she's in the same time zone as me, but Abilene has really bad internet, just the whole city, so that wasn't working well. But the thing is, being a DM for that much and learning to just roll with whatever the characters and the players came up with and work it together actually prepared me a lot for the stories that I'm writing now, because I have very little control over what my characters do. And a lot of times they surprise me, or I'm trying to get to know a character and they lead with, oh, yeah, where did I get the grouchy old man? Oh, I inherited him from my previous human companion when my planet blew up. And it's, yeah, when your characters present you with stuff like that, you just have to run with it.
Yep.
So,
oh yeah.
And I do greatly enjoy it, and my stories draw on some of that. The moments you remember from RPG, sometimes it's just the silly things that happen in the tavern.
Oh yeah, I mean, sometimes the downtime was the most fun part of the game.
Downtime is half fun, and with my stories, they are a balance between.
No, you're good. You're good.
I know what a pain it is to have to try and get errant sounds out of audio. That's actually what I'm going to be doing after I get off this call with y'all. I have the next episode of my podcast that I have to go through and edit and get ready because it comes out tomorrow.
Oh yeah. Speaking of, you have your own podcast where you read your stories.
Yes. So it's called the Strange Space Adventures podcast. And I have recorded all of my first novella, Feathered Friendship, which is the one about the bird who wants to be a starship captain.
Okay.
And every week I put out an episode with between 1 and 3 chapters of the story of me reading it, along with just a little introduction and different things like that. So it's been a lot of fun recording it. One of the things that I've learned when I've been doing the Memphis region con circuit was that so many people who are interested in my stories prefer audiobooks for one reason or another. Yeah. Or prefer podcasts, which totally fair. 90% of the time when I'm working on the stained glass or my other artwork, I have podcasts or audiobooks going because I can enjoy it without having to stare at it. But I don't currently have it in my budget, and the, again, tiny indie press I work with /for doesn't have it in their budget yet to send me to a studio to properly record a full audiobook and have it professionally edited and professionally formatted into the right file types and things. Yeah. But I can record it myself as a podcast and share it with people and have it where the stories are a bit accessible that way. So it's a fun weekly thing. I'm starting with Feathered Friendship, and I'm going to be presenting each season of the podcast a different one of the stories. So right now it's Feathered Friendship. The next one will be Celadon, and I'll just be going from there, trying to play catch up with all the books I've already written.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I was skimming through the first episode, and your audio production is really good, like all the sound effects you have and stuff.
Thank you. I actually recorded the sound effects myself.
Oh wow.
So the wind chime sound you'll hear between things or underneath the Florivan voices. So my aliens have a wind chime tone to their voices. That is a set of wind chimes that I got when I was in England at a place called the Scrap Store that just has all of the cast-off art supplies from everywhere across London that I got to go to a couple times in school. So I have the set of wind chimes, so I recorded that, and then the harp music that you hear playing me as well. So I recorded a version of one of my favorite O'Carolan tunes to use as the theme song for the series.
So you play the harp?
Celtic harp, yeah.
That's awesome. You're like a jack of all trades, like you do it all.
Yep.
I do a little bit of quite a lot of things, yeah. And I lived in the middle of nowhere when I was growing up, and I was homeschooled. So it kind of
I see.
You wind up with a lot of interesting assortments of hobbies.
Yeah.
And it turned out pretty well. I mean, I'm doing all of this, and my brother is a literal rocket scientist. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Does he work for like NASA or JPL or something?
He works for a company called Crossbow, spelled with an X because, of course, tech companies.
Of course, yeah.
But he does things involving rocket fuel and 3D printers, and that's as much as I'm allowed to know. But they all sorts of very interesting things. But we're pretty close, and that's part of why there's such the sciencey part of the science fiction is partially because my brother and I loved all of the really old sci-fi shows when we were kids, because fellow techs, and you will understand this, the signal from the broadcasting towers of the television stations in Lubbock and Amarillo barely reached our farm. And when they switched to digital, we didn't get television signal at all anymore. So everything, when I was in junior high and high school, everything my brother and I were watching was old shows on DVD that my mother had picked for us. So that was the original Battlestar Galactica, Lost in Space, again, original, not the stupid movie. Buck Rogers, the original Star Trek, all the rest of the Star Trek that there was at that point in time, all of this other old mystery shows, a little bit of everything. I've got the entirety of MASH memorized to the point where I can identify an episode within the first 60 seconds, if not less, of everything that's going to happen in it. Thank you, Dad and Grandpa. So all of that old stuff and the writing in the older shows does have an influence on what I write now, especially because, again, the episodes you remember in a lot of that are the ones that have more of just the characters playing off of each other. I mean, my happy place with the original series of Star Trek is The Trouble with Tribbles. You cannot top the Tribbles. That is just a perfect episode in so many ways.
I mean, it's a classic episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the DS9 going back in time to that one is also great. But it's just kind of I love the old writing, and I love writing that is focused on the characters and not so much on the quote plot, end quote.
Yeah,
But
completely.
I don't really believe in adding in tension and drama for the sake of tension and drama. If my characters are having drama, there's a reason for it.
Yeah. It's like that feeling of drama versus melodrama where it's like purposefully just thrown in for the plot and it doesn't affect the characters in any meaningful way.
Yeah, and I don't believe in making characters suffer just to make them suffer.
I feel like that's become a very prominent thing in like newer writers where they're like, oh yeah, I love killing off characters just to make my other characters feel bad.
Yeah, and everything. It's like the people who their major writing influences are either Joss Whedon or Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't enjoy either of those things. I like seeing my characters live their lives, and I love the older shows because, especially with the original series of Star Trek, you know that your cast, except for the one person who just got introduced that episode, you know that the majority of them are going to get through it at the end, and the fun part is seeing how they get through the situation, not, is my favorite character going to die this week?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I
definitely get that cozy feeling from your stories.
Yeah, I do enjoy that. And some of my stories do have space battles. I have several of them in the book that I'm working on right now, which is sort of a prequel to my novel Garden in the Darkness. So that one is about a couple of space fighter pilots who are lost and separated from their unit and stranded on this random planetoid mining outpost that's been overgrown with plants on the inside. The cover of that one, it's the green one that looks like a jungle.
Yeah.
And the little fuzzy baby alien that hangs out with these pilots has to try and help them get home. Well, the book I'm writing right now is how did this human pilot wind up with the cute little alien, and what do you mean he and the cute little alien were lost and separated from their unit for an entire year, hitchhiking on alien ships trying to get back?
Oh god, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, so that's what I'm in the middle of writing right now, and there are some space battles in that. There's also a chapter that is partially devoted to teaching the human to properly use the alien eating utensils, because one of my other things that I love is ancient history and prehistoric stuff, so animals and dinosaurs, and I have this alien species that show up in my stories that are especially prominent in the book I'm writing. They're called Prelby. Imagine, if you will, a cuttlefish face stuck onto the end of a giant millipede.
Okay.
With one giant eye in the center of the face.
And are they friendly or are they
They're friendly.
scary?
They're humanity's allies.
Okay, gotcha.
It's the pretty ones that want to eat your brain.
Oh, that's the worst, yeah. They lure you in and then they betray you.
Yeah, that may or may not be something that happens in this book. Because Julian Potts, the pilot in question, is sort of my homage to, again, original Battlestar Galactica Starbuck or Buck Rogers and the TV series version, that just hapless pilot that somehow gets into all the trouble without ever trying. And his protector is this little silver-furred thing about the size of a chipmunk.
Awesome.
But because the scene where he's learning to eat with the utensils that are more like a pair of very long crochet hooks, because if you're a species that's kind of millipede-like, you don't want to touch your food with your appendages. Those have been on the ground.
Yeah.
So they have long sticks, and I have an entire chapter that's just teaching the human how to use those. And
That's
that is
really cool.
sort of
I like when writers add like those slice of life moments where it doesn't really, it's not like a huge thing, but it's enough to make it feel grounded and it gives it personality.
Yeah, or it's scenes like in Garden in the Darkness, there is a chapter that Mirrorwind, the little Florvin kitten, insisted I add to it, which is part of why that is an entire novel and not the 5,000 word short story it started as, is because the kitten falls into a overgrown pond early on in the story and demanded that there be a chapter where they got to show that they got cleaned because pond water in your fur apparently is awful. So I have this chapter that is this small, cozy slice of life one where a couple of characters that I'm not going to spoil too much of the book about and tell you who they are, but they have to give the kitten a bath, which apparently is more of an ordeal than people expect it to be.
And is that kitten okay with baths? Because I feel like real life cats, they mostly don't like it, right? My cat hates the water.
So I call them kittens. A brief aside, the speculative biology and my aliens, my Florvins that I talk about and that you'll see on my book covers, they're about human-sized, 4 arms, long prehensile tail, kitty ears, third eye. So they are blue, stripy. They start off as these little silver-furred things.
Okay.
So same creature, just much smaller and covered in fur instead of having hair. And as they grow up, they lose their fur and they get bigger and trade in the fuzzy cuteness for being mostly human-sized and stripy. But they call their young kittens. But if I remember how I worded it in the book, kittens resist getting into the bathwater, and then they resist getting out of the bathwater.
Okay.
And then in Mirrorwind's case, they rocket around the room. Like if you've ever bathed a dog, that post-bath zoom and want to be chased. And then in Mirrorwind's case, there's a specific human that they adore that then after everyone else is hunting for them, they just get up and find him and he tells them to go bring the towel and they drag the towel over so he can dry them off. Yeah.
And speaking of cats, you said you have a cat?
I have 2. The one that you may have heard singing in the background is Miniki. She is a little calico cat who was a street kitten here in Memphis, and through a weird series of events came to live with me. And then her sister is my little void cat, Lottie, who came from the local animal shelter because my mother and I don't believe in having just one cat. You have to have a second cat, especially when you get them as kittens, so that they have a friend. So the 2 of them are my writing assistants. Usually when I'm working, one or the other of them, usually Lottie, is on my lap holding me pinned to my keyboard. They're very helpful. They're also the reason that all of my glass cutting has to be done outside in the mosquito cage, because cats and glass shards are not things you want in the same room. And Lottie is one of those cats that if left to her own devices will eat rubber bands. She will eat strings. She licks paper sacks. So I can't have any of my glass chemicals in the house studio either because I don't trust the cat. But they don't bother my leather stuff, weirdly enough. The only thing that they do with that is wait for me to drop an offcut so they can chase it across the room.
I feel like the eating stuff is like a black cat thing, because my cat, his name is Wally, he's a black cat as well. And we can't have any sort of balloons or strings or rubber bands or plants because he'll just eat everything.
Yeah, the rubber band thing is so frustrating too, because you think you've put them all away and then somehow the cat has found one.
Yeah.
And anytime you see them with one, you have to wonder, was there only one? Or have you eaten several more? And when Lottie was a kitten, we had to take her to the vet at one point because she had eaten a rubber bands and we were worried about her getting sick from it. And she's the only cat that vet tech has ever met who was happy and genuinely happy purring at him the entire time he was x-raying her. because she was a bottle-raised kitten from the Germantown, Tennessee animal shelter, and she loves being held and petted and snuggled. Meanwhile, Maniki will bite people.
Yeah,
But
well, you said she was a stray. I feel like that makes sense.
yeah, Maniki was raised by her mother somewhere in the middle of town, going towards downtown around here. And her mother had been bringing her and her siblings up to this lady's house every day, and the lady was feeding them. And then one day there was only one kitten, and the mother cat brought her up and basically said, "Here, I've weaned her, give her a home." And that lady couldn't take her, and she was friends with my mother's boss at the time, and my mother's boss already had several cats and couldn't take her, so we got her. The poor thing, that my mother's boss was rear-ended on her way to deliver the kitten to us.
Oh, God.
So she was okay, the cat was okay. Maniki has hated being in cars ever since. She will sing to me the entire time, but she's turned out to be a very sweet little cat.
That's
Most
awesome.
of it.
Most of the time.
I mean, she is. Yes.
What are your thoughts on the Calvin timeline, like the three I guess modern Star Trek movies?
I've only let's see. I've only seen the one that was the remake of Wrath of Khan, and it was not really that interesting to me.
Uh-huh.
That came out when I was in uni the first time, actually, but it's kind of a. I don't really like remakes for the sake of having remakes to begin with. Benedict Cumberbatch is no replacement for Ricardo Montalban in any way, shape, or form. And again, it wasn't really my thing, partially because they made those movies so flashy and I guess Marvel movie-esque. I haven't seen many of those either, but when there's so many visual effects on the screen, it gives me migraines. So I have a little bit of a modern movies. A lot of times I can't watch them because they make my eyes hurt physically. So I also I think the thing that bothered me with the new timeline ones was that Star Trek historically had always been about doing something new, going somewhere new with the characters. And there were so many things that they could have done to tell new stories with the opportunity of those movies, that it just kind of annoyed me that they went for, oh no, we're going to do we're going to just take the old things and redo them. It's just not my thing.
Okay. Yeah, because I grew up watching both the classic stuff like you did, and then watching the new stuff, and I actually really enjoyed it. I actually really enjoyed the three movies that came out. I could see like why people don't like it, but I feel like, given that, I'm a writer and we're all like writers in here, I feel like it's pretty cool to like mess around with like alternate universes. You know what I'm saying? And I like how this one had like a different tone. But everything you're saying though, I feel like it's totally valid. So.
Yeah. And granted, to be fair, I've only seen the middle one of those three movies.
Yeah.
Because, again, the flashier and more intense movies get, the less likely I am to watch them. But I guess it's just, I think I would, if they had been aiming towards a new take on it that wasn't quite as flashy, I might have gotten into it more, but I also was getting to the point where I couldn't stand watching movies because of the special effects. So
nowadays, do you watch many movies or TV shows? And if so, do you like stick to like the older stuff, or do you have any that you like that are more modern?
Things that well, for one thing, I don't have Netflix or anything like that, so I don't really see a lot of the new stuff. I kind of still live under a rock. It's just a different shape of a rock. I really, in my happy place anymore with shows that are more modern is animated children's shows. Really loved Owl House. Really, really loved Amphibia. Like Amphibia is just amazing, and it is actually science fiction. You think it's fantasy, but no, it's science fiction.
Oh wow.
Yeah, highly recommended. But I think part of it for me is that a lot of TV shows aimed at adults tend to be any more, or at least the ones that I hear about, tend to be either very violent, very sexual,
Oh, yeah.
or have that aspect of my favorite character is going to die. It doesn't matter which one it is. It's always my favorite characters that are written
Oh my god, yeah.
Like I still haven't seen seasons 9 and 10 of Stargate because they killed off all of my favorite characters in season 8 and there was no point in watching after that.
Okay, I get that.
But the children's adventure shows actually have amazing writing. And I've not seen all of them because again, I have access to Disney Plus. I don't have access to a lot of other things. But things like Owl House and Amphibian that are very character driven. And there is an overarching story, but it's told starting with all of these small moments where you really get to know the world that you're in and the characters and actually come to understand why the stakes matter. I think that's really cool. And from what I have seen of more recent movies or more recent series of things, is that a lot of times they front load you with the conflict rather than front loading you with a reason to care about the conflict. Like,
yeah, no, you're right. Like, I feel like the shows where they get you to care about the characters first and then slowly introduce the like overarching plot, those are the best.
Yeah, and that is one of the things I do sort of unintentionally with my stories, but if I'm going to have stories where in part of the time of the shared timeline of my books I do have an interstellar war going on, but the stories I'm telling are not a play-by-play of every strategic battle in that war. It's more my stories are these particular moments or sets of moments that are why these characters are involved. This is why Celadon is so adamant that they are going to get their lovely little pacifist species involved in this war, because without them, humanity is doomed, which means that they are essentially doomed too. Or this thing of the thing that keeps us going is the friendships we've made along the way and these close ties between characters. Or from a lot of my war stories are actually told from the lens of this little alien child who's being raised by a bunch of darter pilots. That they've lost their family. Yeah, they've lost their family due to this war, but they've been adopted by this little squadron of quote musketeers, and we see parts of what's going on through their eyes. Or some of my stories elsewhere on the timeline, like Feathered Friendship that I'm reading for my podcast right now. It's about a bird who is actually sapient. And instead of the story being centered around the conflict a la half the episodes of Star Trek that Next Generation that focused on poor Data's existence, where it's just what does it mean to be human? It's more about we know she's a person now. How do we get her recognized? Kind of thing.
Right.
Or it's like, you actually want to be part of our society. Okay, let's help you get there. But, when you're writing from the perspective of a budget rigger, it's quite an interesting change from writing space battles.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know what that reminds me of? Have you ever watched Enemy Mine?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's about an intergalactic war between humanity and an alien species, and a human fighter pilot and an alien fighter pilot crash on a planet, and the alien gives birth to a child. And before that, though, the human and the alien, they become friends, and they're stranded on this planet, so they're chilling out, and the human pilot ends up raising the child. He basically becomes like his dad.
My parents were human, and your parent was a drac. So you are a drac. Got it?
I'm a drac.
Yeah. Yeah, great.
And that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. It's like they're surviving on this desolate world, but he's raising this child. He's giving him, like, morals. He's teaching him lessons and stuff. He even teaches him how to play football.
Okay,
And,
that's something I might want to see.
yeah, it's pretty cool. There's like monster. Yeah, there you go. See, it's in the chat. But it's pretty cool. It's pretty wholesome. So that's the vibe I'm getting from like what you write about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
Enemy Mine was such a good movie.
Yeah, I watched that when I was a kid. It blew my mind.
Yeah, two of my favorite movies from when I was a kid as well that are in the sci-fi genre. Both are really old Disney live-action movies. Flight of the Navigator.
David, what were those strange sounds?
Strange sounds.
From the geek's car.
Wow. Well, that's called music.
I want to hear more music.
Excellent.
And The Cat from Outer Space.
Also excellent.
So that kind of thing of the surprisingly complex plots, but the fun part is the connection between the characters. So, and interesting creature designs always make me happy.
Oh yeah, I love speculative biology and stuff.
Oh yes, it's so much fun.
Maybe it's just my modern American like mindset or whatever, but I tried watching Fly the Navigator. Granted, I probably watched it way too young to appreciate it, but it did kind of bore me. I feel like if I went back now and watched it, I would appreciate it because it's one of my dad's favorite movies from when he was a kid. And yeah, I don't know. Go ahead.
You have to put yourself in the right mindset to watch it. It is a little slow in a couple of places, and there are some aspects to the plot that it's kind of the just remember this was made in the 80s kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like the mantra that a lot of the children's movies like of the era, it's like, remember this was the 80s. But it's real. It is really good, and it still holds up for me. But the parts with the adults and different things aren't as much fun as the interactions between the main character and the intelligence of the ship he's flying and his little pocket friend and different things. But also just the fact that the kid is initially so confused as to what's going on, and then it makes more sense later. And if anytime there's an aspect of sibling tensions turning into ride or die sibling affection, it's got some really good points. Is it kind of a little bit of a cheesy 80s movie? Yes, but in a good way.
Oh, trust me, I love 80s movies. Back to the Future, all that. I've always loved watching that. Actually, no, I have a question. Angel, do you know what Flight of the Navigator is?
Nope, never heard of it.
Okay.
You need to make him watch it. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah, well,
I'm
add it
trying
to
to
the
get me to
list.
watch everything.
We have a list.
Yeah, when you mentioned like living under a rock, I was like, oh, that's definitely me. Like they have a kind of a running joke that I don't know about any pop culture stuff.
Well, see, I live under a rock, but I live under a very weird little rock that I have watched. There's a lot of stuff that I am familiar with that most people my age or younger have never heard or experienced.
Okay.
But you talk to me about modern stuff, and I'm just kind of confused.
Right.
Another one is like I love Miyazaki films, so the Japanese animation, 2D animation is my happy place on that. But there's a film that the Studio Ghibli made that's called Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind.
Yeah.
And it is that sci-fi tangent with all of these amazingly weird bug designs and alien critters and this whole forest of strangeness. And the main character is trying to stop a war between her human village and the gigantic alien bug animals. But there's also this really, really weird French surrealist film that looks eerily similar to it. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's Fantastic Planet, not Forbidden Planet, Fantastic Planet. That is one of the weirdest sci-fi things I have ever watched, but also is a lot of fun if you look at it from a this is weird French surrealist sci-fi perspective. But
I've seen this.
yeah, y'all might. I want to hear how y'all get on with Fantastic Planet, because the whole concept is that humans are tiny little pet organisms on this fantastic alien planet that's inhabited by gigantic aliens that are vaguely human shaped, and also every weird critter you can possibly imagine, and then some.
No, it
Yeah.
sounds cool.
I've seen I think a clip on YouTube, and I was just like, huh, yeah, this looks French.
It looks French.
It's really weird, but again, watch it back to back with Studio Ghibli's fantastic. Yeah, so that's Fantastic Planet. That's the weirdness of it in a nutshell right there. Watch it back to back with Nausicaa of the Valley of the Winds, and I don't know if there's a connection, but there's a lot of stylistic similarity there. But the speculative biology, speculative zoology, playing around with how weird can I make my aliens and still make people want to be friends with them is part of the fun of writing sci-fi for me. And while my Florvins are very humanoid, you may have noticed when I was talking about the Prelvi, they're very strange and bug-like. My critters that live under the ice at Europa are a weird mix of anglerfish and cephalopod and bioluminescent tendrils and all this fun stuff. And then I've got some there's one on the cover of my novella Warmth and Darkness. They're called Tershfell. They're telepathic, telekinetic, think little feathered serpent crinoid thing with about a dozen eyes on stalks, like slug eyes that can stare at you from any direction.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it's fun to me to write from the alien perspective. It's fun to me to play with that unusual aspects of what humans are, because according to my aliens, humans are rather strange.
We really are, aren't we?
I mean, that's fair.
Nah, we were meant to inherit the stars.
Okay.
Just play.
Got a Warhammer fan here.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm actively painting a Warhammer figure as we talk.
Of course. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it's a gift for my sister.
Oh.
Yeah, my favorite Studio Ghibli film has to be Howl's Moving Castle. I love the love story there.
Oh, that one is wonderful. And again, I love the animation in that. I love the mechanics of Sophie's curse.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, you can't go wrong with Calcifer. He's just awesome.
Oh, my sister loves that movie. She does not stop talking about it. I'm yet to see it though.
You know, Angel, I'm gonna have to send you a link. There's this YouTuber who builds like minis and things like that, and he builds Howl's Moving Castle out of trash.
Oh, I think
that's cool. Wait,
you're talking about. That's really cool.
Oh
I
yeah,
think I've seen like the thumbnail, but I don't think I ever watched it.
Why am I not surprised?
Okay.
Oh man. Angel, do you want to close us out? We're looking to be at an hour and 4 minutes. Not bad.
Hour
Not bad.
4, hour 5.
I
Yeah,
helped
Go ahead.
with the recording well enough.
Do you have any final thoughts, Katie, for the audience?
Just don't stop imagining it. Don't stop creating. Its stories are how we change the world by telling us what is possible or what should be possible. That's what I gathered from, again, watching Star Trek a lot growing up. But that is what I write for. And of course, I have my podcast, Strange Space Adventures, going on. I've got my books out and various things. If you need a coloring book, I can help you with that. But in general, just I'm happy to have been here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us. You guys can check her out at kdsilverwings.com. We'll link it down in the description. Thank you so much for watching episode 6 of season 2 of Forbidden Radio. And make sure you like and subscribe, and we hope to see you in the next one. Bye, guys.
Peace out, guys.